Hey again, Matt Hamilton, author of Through Travel and Error, Confessions of an Asylum-Seeking Canadian. Welcome back to my online readings. This week it's chapter 14, which is called Monday. So I got this job running this pub in Cinsa, and if I thought life was good, I had no idea. This job truly was magic. My life in Cinsa was magic. I basically began by watching the sunrise from bed. Get up and go stock the bar, bask on the beach. I'd have to, do a few little odds and ends here and there, but it was done in baggies and barefoot. And then I'd get to run this bar at night, which was filled with a beautiful flow of people from all over the world. And I got paid. it really was magic. But every now and then we had these odd staff meetings, but I really couldn't complain. Even though this one happened to be on a Monday, they were always conducted outdoors on this unbelievable deck that had this stunning view of the ocean. And that's where this story will begin, with me sitting on the deck, listening to what's being said, but at the same time letting my mind wander. Anyways, I hope you enjoy. It's chapter 14, Mondays. There was a mysterious large ripple in the bay that grabbed my attention. Upon further inspection, I concluded that the ripple was, in fact, a pod of dolphins. From where I was sitting, the pod appeared to be enormous and swimming just on the other side of the break. There are many things in life I hope to experience: jumping out of a plane, trekking the Himalayas, and viewing Earth from outer space, to name a few. However, near the top of my wish list was swimming in the water with dolphins. To be clear, I'm not talking about frolicking in a tank at some marine park with trained dolphins that do backflips and shoot through hoops on request. Rather, my desire was to be in the open sea with wild dolphins. Shortly after my arrival at Smuggler's Cove, while sitting on the beach, I enviously watched surfers play in the waves with half a dozen dolphins. The surfers and dolphins were sharing the waves. As much as I wanted to be out with them, the dolphins were too far out for me to swim safely. As I sat there watching man and beast play, I vowed to learn to surf for no other reason than to be able to swim with dolphins one day. Unfortunately, learning to surf was a tough gig. By the time of the staff meeting, I still wasn't anywhere near talented enough to paddle out to the pod. Still, they were very close. Then I remembered that Grant was on the beach. Grant was the Cove Surf School instructor and the true definition of beach bum. He had a passion for dolphins that surpassed even mine. I knew that his surf lessons were ending and that he had his two-man sea kayak stored halfway down the hill. I needed to get out of this meeting. And you know what? I did. I looked over the guy who was conducting, who was also a beach bum. He saw the dolphins out there and he said, get on out. So I ran down the beach and grabbed Grant, we grabbed his kayak, and we paddled out, and we were in this pod of dolphins that had to be a few hundred, at least 200, 300, I don't know. There were dolphins everywhere, and this is where we'll pick up the story. Making eye contact in close proximity with an intelligent yet wild creature is a mind-blowing experience. By staring into their eyes, I felt as though I had made a connection with nature. I realized that there wasn't too much difference between these wonderful animals and myself. We were both living creatures, and we were essentially neighbors, sharing this remarkable chunk of a rock called Earth, which was a place we both considered home. The exhilaration can only be compared to, and I hate to say it, sex. However, much like getting caught in the act by your girlfriend's parents, my joy quickly turned to panic when I heard Grant shout, "Oh fuck, Brew, paddle! Paddle!" My first thought was shark. Big shark. Part of the reason I was hesitant about swimming far out to sea with dolphins had nothing to do with my swimming abilities, which were fairly strong. I was tentative because I had heard, where there are dolphins, there are sharks, once too often. This may have been an ocean myth, but I had heard a couple of first-hand accounts about people being in the water when dolphins had, in some way, come to the rescue. Whether dolphins were protecting people from sharks, or whether dolphins and sharks both hunted the same prey, was irrelevant. Enough people had stated their association as fact for me to be somewhat cautious. Not to mention, it was the Indian Ocean, which had an abundance of sharks. In addition, I knew that Grant was more shit scared of sharks than I. His phobia was so severe that he didn't even like to say the word shark. So when Grant screamed, "Oh fuck, brew paddle," my first thought was that we were about to become lunch. Being in the front of the kayak, I wasn't able to turn around to see how big the beast was. I was too fearful that I might tip us into the monster's awaiting jaws. Although it wasn't much, I felt a million times safer on this piece of fiberglass as opposed to treading water with my appetizing legs. I shouted over my shoulder and asked from what direction the creature was making his attack. "It's not a shark. Look at the fucking wave." I barely had a second. But in that second, I realized that we were so captivated with the dolphins, we hadn't noticed that our kayak had drifted into the oncoming wave's breaking point. This particular wave, which was massive, was sucking us up and over. The angle of the wave and gravity launched me from the craft. The last thing I saw before the wall of water drove me beneath the surface was Grant clinging to the back of the kayak as it was catapulted into the air by the mammoth wave. I was dragged underwater and tossed like a rag doll. The moment before we flipped, dolphins had surrounded us. As far as I knew, they hadn't gone anywhere, and they should still be there. In fact, they were everywhere. They were swimming all around me. I could feel them swoop by, skillfully avoiding my floating body. The dolphins swam under my legs, over my head, and past my outstretched arms. Feeling their energy race past me was overwhelming. When I surfaced, I was facing the oncoming pod. Countless fins ducked and dived past my throbbing body. I stuck my head back underwater to watch the gray blurs darting past. Although the shadowy outlines of the darting dolphins were spectacular, it was the noise of these creatures that had me locked in a state of amazement. The sound wasn't your typical dolphin noise, and it was not at all what I was expecting. It was nothing like the high-pitched chirpy banter on Flipper. Flipper was only one dolphin. Beneath me, there were 300 or so flippers communicating. The sound was deafening. The best I can describe the noise would be to compare it to a bowl of Rice Krispie cereal the size of a swimming pool. Then imagine the snap, crackle, and pop that it would create when you poured milk onto the big bastard. That is the sound of 300 dolphin. Grant, who had miraculously held onto the kayak, snapped me out of my trance and got me back onto the craft. We paddled with the mammals for another hour. It was 3 o'clock on a Monday afternoon. I noticed the time and day because, like many other moments during my travels, I realized how fortunate I was to be experiencing what I was experiencing. I also thought of what I would have been doing if I hadn't built up the courage to leave Canada. At that moment, it was 9 in the morning in North America. Most of my Canadian friends were just arriving at work, or worse, they were stressing because they were stuck in traffic and late for work. Either way, they were at the very beginning of the 5-day stretch. At that moment, it was 3 in the afternoon in most of Europe and in the United Kingdom. These friends were probably staring at the clock and thinking, "Damn, this is another long-ass Monday that doesn't ever want to end." At that moment, it was 11 at night in Australia. My friends down under were perhaps getting ready for bed after a long, tough, draining Monday on the job. It was feasible that as they drifted off to sleep, they were thinking, "Fuck, I've got 4 more days of this shit before the weekend." At that moment in time, I was swimming with dolphins in the wild. At that moment in time, I was living out a dream. Life was very, very good. And yes, it was. I certainly did get to live out a dream and experience something absolutely fascinating. It's still one of the highlights of my life, and yeah, it is up there with sex, looking at wild dolphins in the eyes. Anyways, if you wanted to read the rest of that chapter or find out more about myself and or the book, please give my website a visit, madmaddiesworld.com. And yeah, we will see you next week with a continuation of my adventures through Africa. Until then, have a safe one and a great one. Bye-bye.